Hey everybody, welcome to Supplementary video 22.1 to 22.5. In this video, we're going to be covering everything on chapter 22, everything as it relates to the respiratory or the pulmonary system. So we can divide the pulmonary system into two different zones. You have the conducting zone and the respiratory zone. The conducting zone is going to be basically routes for air to travel through. The respiratory zone is going to be where the actual oxygen and carbon dioxide gas exchange is going to take place. In the conducting zone, you're also going to get some other functions. They're going to be removing debris because you don't want that debris reaching the very delicate structures of the respiratory zone. It's going to warm and humidify the air, which is also going to make it a lot easier on those structures in the respiratory zone. And you'll get some other structures in this area that do other functions but aren't part of necessarily respiration, things like olfaction or smelling. Your nose is part of the conducting zone, but smelling is obviously not part of being able to breathe. So the conducting zone, we'll start with the nose here. You have the external nose, going to be composed of alar cartilage. You have a septum separating the right and left nasal cavities, going to be composed of that septal cartilage on the anterior side, and then the ethmoid bone on the posterior side. You also have sinuses, the paranasal sinuses, frontal, maxillary, sphenoidal, and ethmoidal. That are going to be producing the mucus, that are going to be warming the air as it enters through your nose, and also just that hollow space that we talked about in the skeletal system unit is going to help lighten the weight of the skull. The pharynx, the naso and oropharynx, going to be at the back of the nose and the back of the mouth. The nasopharynx is going to have your pharyngeal tonsils, and also your Eustachian tubes are going to be attached here. So that's why different air pressures can be adjusted in the mouth, especially if you're having ear issues here. And the oropharynx is going to have the palatine and the lingual tonsils. In the respiratory zone, you're going to have you're going to have alveoli made of three different cell types. You have type 1, which are going to be allowing for gas exchange. You have type 2, which are going to be secreting what's called pulmonary surfactant, kind of a liquid, mucousy kind of thing that's going to help decrease the surface tension in those alveoli. And then you have alveolar macrophages, which are going to be traveling, removing any sort of debris and pathogens that are managed to get all the way to those alveoli, because, again, you don't want those entering into your bloodstream. So you want to make sure that you're able to protect your blood, protect those alveoli as best you can. A little bit on hemoglobin here. The binding of oxygen to hemoglobin forms oxyhemoglobin. I think we do talk about that in the high school side. And actually, the binding of an oxygen to a hemoglobin actually makes it easier for the next oxygen to bind to a hemoglobin up to the 4, because remember, you have 4 subunits of hemoglobin. The reverse is also true. As you lose an oxygen, that's going to make it easier for the next one to be released. How this is happening, basically, there are chemical changes being induced as an oxygen binds or as an oxygen leaves to hemoglobin that orients the hemoglobin in a way that improves the ability of oxygen to either associate or disassociate with that hemoglobin molecule. And then the last slide here on carbon dioxide and blood pH. Carbon dioxide gets moved in the blood in 3 different ways. A little bit is going to be dissolved as actual carbon dioxide in the blood. Most of it, however, is going to be transported as bicarbonate. So you can see bicarbonate here, HCO3 minus. So it's an anion here. You're going to have an enzyme called carbonic anhydrase, which causes carbon dioxide to react with water and forms carbonic acid, which is going to immediately split into bicarbonate and hydrogen ions. One of the important functions of the respiratory system is to monitor and change your blood pH, and so this is one way that you can do that. If you have more bicarbonate being carried in the blood, you're going to have more hydrogen ions. You're going to have much more acidic blood, which, depending on your situation, usually that's going to be a bad thing, but maybe you're in a situation where you have a very low blood pH and you need to raise that blood pH. This is one way that you can do it, and your body can actually adjust this just based on how fast you're going to be breathing. The other fraction of carbon dioxide is going to be transported as carbaminohemoglobin, which is going to be carbon dioxide attached to a hemoglobin. So That's just a brief overview of Chapter 22. Again, most of this for this unit gets covered in the high school portion of the side. These are just a few of the extra things that